Hit record.
We're recording. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our debut, Writing the Zeitgeist, an interview conversation series where we want to be showcasing our members who are doing work in the world that is about capturing the collective consciousness. Let's say it that way. My name's Marge Hahn. I'm going to be your back of the house person. And in that role, I want to explain to you as you're joining us how to use the chat room. In your, if you move your cursor around, there's a functionality bar. If you click on chat, it'll show up somewhere on your computer. Mine is in the lower left, right-hand corner. There's a webinar chat room with a drop-down menu to, all panelists and attendees is what you want to click on. And we'd love it if you could tell us where you're logging in from. I'm going to show you. Hi, everyone. Marge logging in. Marge from Colorado. Please let us know where you're logging in from. And that's also the place where you'll communicate with me any technical issues. Distinct from the Q&A, which is also in that functionality bar, please, if you have questions for Rev Lisa Jenkins or Jan around the content of their conversation, please use the Q&A because those questions stay static, whereas the chat room will roll up into the ceiling. Hey, Barbara from Florida. Hi, Gatine from New York. Excellent. I'm going to hand the baton to Jan Phillips, who will introduce you to Reverend Lisa Jenkins. Thanks so much, Lisa and Jan, for joining us.
All right, then. Welcome to this fun event. I ran into Lisa at the AWP convention in Tampa, Florida, a couple months ago, March. And she was walking around with this prototype of this book she had just done, which flabbergasted me because I had just then seen the movie Black Panther, which had just come out, and she already had a book addressing the biblical and cultural implications of this book, of this movie, written from the perspective of a minister. She's ministering in New York City. And I was just astonished by how fast that happened and that it happened and that her spirituality informed her creativity with such velocity and magic that it all manifested so immediately. And that captured my imagination, and that's why I thought it would be so great to share this webcast with people all over, all you women writers, because you want the same thing to happen to you. And so we're going to go over the steps as to how to make it happen, that we're responding to the cultural particularities of our times. We're responding from our cultural standing, our class standing, our marginalized standing. I myself right now am writing a memoir on being a lesbian mystic. I'm sitting 20 minutes away from the Mexican border, so I'm also informed by the migrant caravans, which are there right now. So that's kind of playing me and working me. And so we're going to delve into, I bring some questions to Reverend Lisa Jenkins here. And you'll see how it happens that she made magic with some raw ingredients that she's just going to share with us here. So, Lisa, before we officially start, why don't you give us a little brief bio of who you are, what your work is, how you came to be there, how you identify as a writer, that kind of overview so we get centered in your being.
Yeah. Well, I am... right now, I'm the senior pastor of the St. Matthew's Baptist Church, which is located in Harlem. It's an African-American congregation. I am the 10th pastor and the first female. And it's quite a journey. One of the interesting things that I mention to people is that 24 years ago, I was kicked out of the church as an unwed mother. I had my son out of wedlock, and it was 1994, which was not so long ago. But for whatever reasons, the pastor at that time felt that because, now I wasn't even a minister, I was not in ministry, but he felt that I should stay away from the church for a while because I was, he said, in leadership positions in the church. And then the interesting thing about that was, while I was asked to leave, my son's father was allowed to stay. He was minister of music. So the male was allowed to stay. I was asked to leave. Long story short, a couple of years later, well, he did wind up asking me to come back, but I was licensed and all in that very church, licensed to preach. So I was ordained some years later at another Baptist church where I was on staff full time. I also served as an adjunct lecturer of multicultural studies for the City University of New York at York College. And I have also served as an instructor at New York Theological Seminary, where I've taught New Testament studies, biblical exegesis, and also teaching as a TA, rather, with Dr. Aubrey Hendricks, who is the author of The Politics of Jesus, which is a fantastic work. So he's authorized me to teach courses on that work. And right now, I'm a doctoral student at McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago, where my African-centered religious thought and ministry. So in a nutshell, that's who I am. I consider myself, I guess, a cultural theologian. I just started thinking about that most recently when people ask me about this book. And I look at the Bible, I look at theology from the standpoint of someone who is entrenched in her particular culture and all of what it encompasses and involves. So that's who I am. Most of my sermons have something to do with what's happening right now in our culture, in our world, in our country, whether it's politically, whether it is something to do with human rights or social justice, or if something just happened in the community or the neighborhood or hit the news. I tend to weave that into my sermons because I believe that the Bible addresses everything if we understand how to read it and exegete what it is that we're looking at.
All right.
So, nutshell.
That's a nutshell, I guess. That's a pretty pithy nutshell. Very loaded. All right, good. So why don't we just address the question of astonishment that this book kind of was born so fast. How did that happen that you had it all together just, it seemed, moments after we were witnessing the movie for the first time on the cultural scene?
I had it actually pretty much together the day the movie came out. I did the ebook first. I uploaded the ebook. It was Black History Month. It was the Lenten season. So 40 days. I wanted something to go with the Lenten season. And as I was writing, I kept saying, you know what, just do 30 days. Just do 1 month, do a 30-day devotional. But something, I just kept saying, no, 40, you got to do the 40. So how did that, people keep asking, how did that come about? I am a Marvel comic fan, Marvel movie fan. But when I heard that the Black Panther was coming out last year, when I heard this last year, maybe August, July, I don't know, I went berserk. It had nothing to do with the devotional. It had nothing to do with a book. Remember, I've never done a book in my life. This is my first book. Remember that.
Yeah.
I've never published a book. So when I heard that the movie was coming out, I set a Google alert for the Black Panther. So anytime a trailer came out, an interview came out, anytime an article was released, I received it in my inbox. This was all for the fun of it. So I'm watching the trailers over and over for the fun of it. I'm just getting kicks out of all of this. I think it's just awesome. I'm reading the interviews. I'm listening to the interviews with the director and with Chad Boseman and all of the other actors and actresses. And so I'm just having a great time. And then so when February comes around, I'm saying, oh my goodness, Black History Month is coming. I need a sermon series. So I said, oh my goodness, let me do a sermon series on the Black Panther movie. So I said, well, let me start planning that. Then I said, you know what, Lisa, I keep saying I'm going to do a devotional. I need a devotional. Every year I have a devotional, a 40-day book, a 40-day devotional or meditations or something for the Lenten season. I had nothing this year. So the Holy Spirit says, why don't you just do something? You keep saying that you're going to do something, do it. So my plan was to type something up, do a spiral binding in my church office, and just hand it out to my members. That was the plan. Type something up, run it off on the copy machine, and do a spiral binding of some sort. And I can't even tell you what hit me when I said, when finally, it hit me. It definitely, I can only say it was the Holy Spirit. That's what I say. You got to do a book. You keep saying you're going to do a book. Do a book. How do I do a book? I don't know. Well, figure it out. That's always been my motto, figure it out. And so I decided to use the KDP publishing platform.
Say what that means, because we got people that don't know about Kindle.
Well, it's the Kindle Direct Publishing platform with Amazon. I've been an Amazon customer since 1999. So I said, you know what, let's just take this a step further. I had already signed up for an account quite some time ago, but never used it. I'd signed up for an account. I'd looked through it, but never done anything with it. So I said, let me get this done. I had already started also looking at Scrivener, which I'm sure you're familiar with Scrivener, and some of your other members are, the writing platform. So I had started playing around with Scrivener. It has a steep learning curve, but once you get the hang of it, it is priceless. Priceless, I tell you. So I started typing. I'm a typist. I started typing in the 5th grade. So that's what I do. And as I'm thinking, I'm typing. I can't even tell you. So I would look at the trailers. Something would hit me. Like, for instance, T'Challa Okoye says in one trailer, she says to him, don't freeze. And he says, I never freeze. He says, I never freeze. And he goes down the chute. So with that, when I think of freezing, I think of being frozen with fear. And so with that scripture, I did, God has not given us a spirit of fear. And then I talked about how fear is false evidence appearing real. I go into that and I talk about the movie. So that's just one aspect. And all for every day, I'm looking at the trailers, I'm looking at the interviews, I'm reading the articles, and something grabs me each time. And the only thing I got to do is then, once something grabs me, either a scene or a quote, then I just have to get a scripture for it. And after I get a scripture for it, I have a reflection for it that ties the movie in to the scripture. And again, let's not forget the contemporary aspects. Some of them are historical, some of them are contemporary. For instance, one scene was when Okoye is in the chase scene in South Korea, and she seems bored in the chase scene, and she says, "Oh, guns, so primitive." Now remember, this is supposed, she comes from a place where people think it's a developing country, but she says guns so primitive. And I'm dealing with, in that instance, the fact that we live in the most developed country, supposedly in the world, but we have among the highest rate of due to guns. How fascinating, for lack of a better word, in a mind-boggling sense is that, when we are a developed country, okay, a westernized developed, but we have such a high rate of gun violence. So I talk about that. And again, it all comes from my passion, I suppose, for one, writing, even though I've never been published before. 2, social justice, and 3, just, being a Marvel movie fan. That was what it was in the beginning, because remember, I had no idea, no plans to write a book. This all came about, I would say, the end of January, the beginning of the end of January. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions about the structure, because I think up and coming writers always, let's just say, first off, we have a notion of what we want to write about. Right. For many people, the hard part is having a feeling of that skeleton on which to hang it, the template or the blueprint. What's the prevailing metaphor? And your structure, for those who haven't seen the book or downloaded it yet, it looks to me, it's very consistent, very orderly. There's usually a quote from the Old Testament, one from the New Testament, a short devotion, a short kind of devotional,
a reflection of some sort.
A reflection, which is very contemporary, and then a prayer. I think you usually have a prayer at the end, don't you?
Yeah, 3 to 4 lines, 3 to 4 sentences of prayer.
Yeah. So it's very, very succinct. Yeah. And I was just wondering, did you have to work hard? This whole thing feels like it's magically unfolding. It's as if you're being directed how to do your first book. But did you have to think at all about the structure of it? Or did that just come with organic unfolding?
Well, it came from being exposed to other books, actually. You can't write unless you read. And
yes.
I've seen other devotionals, and I took a look at some of the other devotionals that were in my library. And for the most part, the ones that I felt the most simple thing to do was to have the scripture, whether it was Old Testament or New Testament, then the reflection or devotion, and then the prayer. That was the most simple. So that was the structure that I used. Day 1, day 2, same thing. And the only thing that I had to do was look at these trailers, read these interviews, which I love doing, and find something that grabbed me. See, I'm convinced that if you're not passionate about something or enjoying it, it's not going to come out well. One of the things that I teach my congregation and others is that we know we are operating in our area of giftedness, our spiritual gifts, when there is fruit and fulfillment. Fruit meaning there's something that comes out that benefits others, not yourself, but it's something that others can eat, benefit of, fruit. And you are fulfilled from it. You're feeling a sense of fulfillment, and that's the passion of it. So the skeleton that you just mentioned was simple. Day 1, day 2, 3, scripture, reflection, prayer. Now all I got to do is grab something from the trailers, the articles, and so forth. And then once it grabs me, I'm thinking, how does this relate to what scripture can I take? So that was the first thing with me. And this is how I actually even do my sermons. So really, it's almost like short mini sermons. So I'm grabbing a scripture that hits me. Then I'm looking at it. How does that relate to what I just saw? And now what does that relate to in our contemporary society? What's happening right now that I can tie this into? And that's what I do. I tie it into what's happening now, just like I mentioned to you, the gun control issue, issues of self-esteem for African Americans, issues for the women. There's a part in here also. The women were the ones who, in the Black Panther movie, who were very strong. He was the king, but he was wise enough to listen to the women. And they were strong, they were feminine, but they were strong, and they were bold women. So I dealt with that. Mary Magdalene was a bold woman. So I dealt with her voice when she was at the tomb, at the resurrection. People didn't believe her, but she was still bold. And so listening to wise counsel, I think that was one day or chapter, if that's what you want to call it, I did. But that was basically my structure. I don't know if that's helpful, but but that's how I went about it, and it simply unfolded, like you said, magic.
Yes. So, okay, so you chose to go with Amazon Kindle.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like, because that was immediate, because you've been an Amazon customer forever, it was like immediate and close at hand.
Yes.
Because now because we're talking here to a lot of women writers who haven't got there yet. So
Right.
they want to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
So tell me 2 or 3 things that you would do differently.
Well, one of the things that I would do differently is I wasted some time trying to outsource the book cover. Now, that's just me personally, because not everyone, see, I did the book cover myself using canva.com, which I recommend. It's free. C-A-N-V-A, canva.com. It's a free graphics program that I used. And I wasted money and time trying to convey to a graphic artist what I wanted. And they could not conceive or understand what I really wanted. That was one mistake. Another mistake that I used, originally I had, and this was very naive on my part, but I should have known better, was one of the graphics that had been all over the place from the Black Panther movie. It showed pretty much all of the people from the movie, and it looked more like a family scene, so I loved it. And I put that on my cover. That's what I did first, particularly for the ebook, which I did first. I understand some people do paperback first. I did the ebook first because it was the easiest to upload. So I did that, and I realized, it was a friend of mine that said, "Do you have the rights to that photo?" And I said, "Oh, it's all over the place. I see it on this magazine. I see it over here. It's over there. It's all over the place. It's not a big deal." He sent it to a friend of his who's a lawyer, and he said, "Friend of mine is doing her first book. Do you think she can use this on the cover of her book?" And he said, "No, are you kidding me? No, she can't use that." And so he says, "I don't think you should use that. It's pretty iffy." So, I says, "Let me speak to Marvel themselves." And they said, they got back to me pretty immediately and says, "No, we do not allow," what was it, third party something or other, for profit, whatever it was that they said. And I says, "Oh, well, gosh, now I'm totally screwed. I'm messed up." Because I have to find, I loved that cover. I loved it, but I had to come up with something else. So that was one mistake. Make sure that the photos or the images that you are using, that you have the rights to use those. And if you think that you have an idea and you can do something better, don't waste time or money using a so-called professional, because I've used this guy several times and he's done remarkable work for my church and for other promo work. But for this, I knew what I wanted. And so I just took some time and did it myself. So those are the two mistakes I think that I made. Everything else, I think, just fell into place. Like I said, just getting some kinks out with the books on how to format and how to do the links in the ebook so that people could click on the link and it would go directly to the to that particular day or chapter. That took me a while, but it was well worth it. So, yeah.
Okay, so let's. I know that I'm trying to focus this to the writers who are out there trying to figure out how to make the first book happen. But
Yeah.
I also want to hear about your exploration of the phenomenon Black Panther movie and its impact, its social cultural impact, its impact on the Black community, its impact on the white community, its impact on our cultural consciousness from the viewpoint of a woman in the spiritual milieu. Let's talk a little bit about that for a couple minutes.
Yeah. This movie, I think, is amazing It would have been amazing 3 or 4 years ago, but I think it's even more amazing now with the culture that we have. Because at this point in our history, we have people who are unashamed to be racist and unashamed to really come out and say what they feel about marginalized people, not just Black people or people of color, but marginalized people overall. And so with this culture, with this time and point in our history, I think that this movie was really at a pivotal point, particularly for the African American community. It shows what the possibilities are. It's a mythical country, obviously. This is obviously, it's like sci-fi. It's superhero stuff that is not real, but the possibilities of what can happen or what could happen without colonization, for instance. That's huge. That's huge what the possibilities are. And it gives African Americans, and I think other people who are open-minded, it gives us a sense of pride, that, and a sense of joy, a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood connecting us, so that we can feel a sense of pride. We can feel strong, because for the past year and a half or so, it's really not been that way in our community. It has really been a really downhill spiral that many people are feeling in their spirits, in their communities, and with one another. So it's a fun movie, but it's also a movie that is filled with wisdom that's not just for the African American community, or I'll say the Black community, because I have some friends in South Africa as well who've spoken about the movie. So I'll say the Black community overall, people of color. It gives us, it's a fun movie, but it gives us a sense of, wow, pride. We've had Black movies before, but this one is filled with so much wisdom and so much. One critic gave the movie, I remember, an okie dokie review. And he said, interestingly enough, that the movie, he did not give the movie 5 stars or whatever, 4 stars, 5 stars, a perfect review, because he said there was not enough shooting scenes or
Oh, yeah.
You
I read that.
Which was interesting.
Yeah.
Giving the movie, you're not giving it a perfect score because there's not enough violence in the movie. Here, can you imagine that? Now, it was an action-packed movie. I mean, it's full of action.
It was nonstop, yeah.
But in other words, there was too much stuff that made you think. You want people to have the action and the violence and less thought. And this movie had all of it. It made you think. It made you sit on your seat with the action. It made you clap your hands. And it made you go away saying, wow. For me, it made me go away saying, I need to see that again and again and again, 4 times in all. Okay.
Yes, and I'm in the same boat. And I think that there was a very subtle change. You know, I'm not a fan of Marvel Comics, and I'm not a fan of, I don't attend those movies with superheroes. I've never seen the Avengers. I was a Superman fan as a kid. That was the extent of it. But I'm very interested as a cultural creative in the possibilities that I felt this film brought to the culture at large to help us deal with the crisis of racial intolerance that we're ensconced in right now. And I thought, what came out of that movie that was so subtle was the fact that our hero had a genius level intellect, that he didn't always have to resort to violence because he's so brilliant. He's got Olympic level strength. He's got brilliant genius. He's a bit of a politician. He's a total strategist. He's like a scientist in some part of him. He's like a Superman in real life, in his soul, in his spirit. He has all the components we're hoping for in the human of the future.
Yeah.
And that this came out of a young Black director who made it happen. I mean, the other two films he's made happen also have, you know, great critical possibilities and were important films. But this, to me, I also have to see it again because I tried to see it last night on my screen from bed because I thought, oh no, I have to refresh before I talk to you about it. But the impact is so almost beyond words.
Yeah.
It's difficult to articulate it because it's a whole new thing, you know, and I can't imagine it. It's not the same. I mean, my subculture is LGBT, and there would be no equivalent if there was a film of superpowers that had to do with LGBT community. You know, there's no equivalent for it. But I, as a student of the culture, as a public scholar, which I also acknowledge you as a public scholar, that your ability to take something artistic right out of the culture and immediately transform it into another shape. It was an act of alchemy that you transformed this film into a devotional.
Yeah.
And serve. Now I'm going to take on the mantle right now of a prospective publisher. And I'm going to ask you, who's your target market?
My target market was, and I'm saying was because again, I was going to do this for just my church. Remember, it was just going to be pieces of paper. But now my target market has been anyone that is interested. I originally would say people of African descent, but really anyone that is interested in such a book or a piece of work like this that would like to look into this whole cultural aspect of what it means to take biblical texts and pieces from the Black Panther movie and what it means for us as a collective unit of people. You know, one of the things that I did not mention, and we were talking about the target audience, people that are concerned about what's happening in our world, I would say. Because if you remember, one of the things that people were asking, well, I shouldn't say remember, but I know one of the things people were asking was who was the villain? And we say the villain was Killmonger. And I want to propose that Killmonger was not the villain, but he was the product of missed opportunities. Missed opportunities. If you remember T'Challa's, the Black Panther's father, did not bring him back. What would have become of Killmonger if he had been brought? Notice I'm saying we. If he had been brought back, what would have become of him? And so what I'm trying to say, the target audience is for anyone that does not want to miss opportunities like that, because all over our country, in our world, we have missed opportunities that are creating killmongers, people and situations that are dangerous. We are missing them. And when Allah asked his father, why didn't you bring back? Why didn't you bring the boy back? T'Challa's father said he was that I chose to omit. What truth to omit? So this target audience, I realized it was not in the beginning, but I've come to realize people anywhere trying to who are choosing to omit the truths, so that we can vet the killmongers of this world, whether they are actual people, they are situations, but we can prevent those killmongers from occurring.
Very good.
That's my target.
Yeah, that's your target market.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of, you know, I know you're coming to the summer conference, and I'm just going to take a minute here to plug the International Women's Writing Guild Summer Conference, because that's the place where all magic breaks loose. But there's a film screenwriter there, Linda Bergman, who does a course in screenwriting. And she has all these little clips from different movies, which she shows to the class in the dark room. We all watch the clips, might take 5 or 6 minutes. And then she'll stop the movie, take her time, and talk about why that happened for the benefit of those of us who are writing scripts. And I think you could benefit, we could benefit from you taking little clips of that movie, somehow figuring out how to do it, working with clips, even in churches, even in public squares, even in libraries, you being the national expert on how to translate this cultural phenomenon into our moral imaginations. You know, how to use it. I'm just always looking at how can it be more than it is even now, because you have created a book which is absolutely fabulous. Now I'm going to put on my book publisher hat again, and I'm going to ask you, because you didn't have to do a book proposal because you did this yourself, but I'm imagining that you wanted to have a wider audience, and so I'm going to suggest you do a book proposal. And the second component is going to be, what's your marketing strategy?
My marketing strategy for this book that I'm doing right now, my marketing strategy, Twitter, it has been, I have been putting the word out. I know my network, I've been calling up individuals. So right now, if you go on my Amazon page, I have an Amazon author page. And my Amazon author page lists my book signings and tour dates. So I have been I think I have like 4,000 Facebook friends. And Twitter followers I have far less. Just over and over putting it on inboxing everyone, which is not the way to do it. I also have a blog that I need to be more consistent with. Consistency is so absolutely important. So I blog, and at the bottom of my blog, I have the information, Lisa D, author of 40 Days of Biblical and Cultural Insight, of course, to Amazon. I blog. Also, when I put my information in my blog, I also use Medium. There is a slight uptick in purchase the ebook or download the ebook or purchase the paper. So my members putting the word out as well. I have a book signing store in Harlem and in Detroit this coming Friday at the Detroit NAACP's annual gathering, which is huge. So
good. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Hey, Marge, are you hearing us? Because I'm finding that Reverend Lisa keeps breaking up.
Yeah, and it's because of an unstable Wi-Fi connection, Reverend Lisa. So we're just gonna fly with it.
Is that
and just know that that's happening. I've been tracking if there's anything critical.
Should I try to?
It's just getting worse. Can you plug in? No, she can't plug in.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep going, and just note, Lisa, that that we're.
Oh, geez.
What happened? Are we?
Yeah, you're blacking out. So for the future.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. I went from Wi-Fi, so I thought that might help.
Oh no. All right. For the future, just know that this is one of your primary ways of getting the word out. So all your equipment, this is a good test run to see. You might need to power up your Wi-Fi, be on a Mac, be on a computer that works. This is just a dry run.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. Okay. But I was telling him my webcam, otherwise I would have been on my laptop.
Yeah, so it's time to upgrade because you are a new person now than you were before this book came out. So I'm having another idea. I'm just going to share this idea with you. this is, I know, because I think it's Holy Spirit too. I call it holy, and I know it's spiritual because I can't see it, but this is what happens. I'm getting a notion that right now, can we see your book? Can you hold it up so we can see your book? 40 Days of Biblical and Cultural Insight into the Black Panther movie. Okay, so I'm just saying, you have established yourself as a kind of a ministerial, pastoral translator of a movie into, say, moral, spiritual ethics, behaviors, etc., actions. So I'm just saying, I noticed your book is very biblical, of course, because it's true to the title. You're delivering what you promised, but I'm a non-biblical person. I'm a post-theist person. So I'm wondering, or say I was a high school student, I'm wondering, could you do this for high schools? Could you do this for, contemporary people who have left the church? Could you reframe and redeliver to other groups of people what you see as a cultural messaging from this prophetic movie?
Sure.
Because you know what? When you approach a publisher, they always love it if you have 3 ideas.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
This and then next and then next. And I'm just saying, I know you can do it because I already read your first one. Wonder what it would be like if your mandate was, okay, don't use the Bible now. Use newspaper headlines.
Well, this is all of my thing. Remember, also, I mentioned that I was or am an adjunct lecturer of multicultural studies.
Yes.
And when I speak, whereas I speak every Sunday from a pulpit, I also address young people as keynote speakers for graduations and other things. And
yes.
I don't mention the Bible. I'm one of those people that believes that I speak for myself, who I am. People will know who I represent. And I don't always have to mention the Bible for people to know who Lisa D. Jenkins is.
Yes.
So I don't need to do that. And I do that when I talk about multicultural studies. I've done that when I do keynote addresses. And certainly, I did not mention that. I think one of the things that makes this work for me also is the fact that I did not mention to you when I was in undergrad, I was a communications major with a journalism emphasis.
Yes, perfect. And it's already evident from this interview that you do that. And I know you picked, your first vessel to contain your first flood of inspiration was a devotional. It just made sense. It had to be that because it's a devotional and this is the structure of devotionals. But I'm just imagining you, a year or 2 out. And I see that this has entered into you like a hurricane. You kind of metabolized it. And so now you can be very useful as a global citizen who talks to us about something that's important, that's hard for people to digest on their own, particularly white people.
Yeah.
It's like, how many of us, I'm looking on the sideboard here and people are saying how many times they saw the movie. And it's true. Somebody saw it, you saw it 4 times. People have seen it over and over. I'm going to watch it over and over because I can't get it at the first take. And I'm a really bright person.
Yeah.
So to have somebody like you with the fullness of your approach, body, mind, spirit. You have a body, mind, spirit approach to everything. You're so holistic. You're so integral that I want to hear you talk about this film because you see things I don't see. So
I'm excited about it. And one of the things that you said is really, you really hit the nail on the head as far as being able to convey it to masses, because my passion is, I don't consider myself an academic. I'm in a doctoral program. Some people have said that I'm an academic. I mean, I know PhDs in academics. My purpose, I know, is to speak to the masses. Is to put things down for people at ground level. I'm very much aware of that. And anything that I do, whether I am teaching in the college or whether I am learning in the doctoral program that I am learning at McCormick Theological Seminary, the end purpose is for me to be able to digest, to break down, and to present to the masses so that it can be understood by the common woman or man out there on the street.
Yes.
I know that.
Yes. All right. So I'm just reviewing now what happens when I come out with a new book and I have to create the marketing strategy.
Yeah.
One of them is always get myself on radio talk shows.
Yeah.
And so the formula for getting on a radio talk show is to come up with like a quarter-page ad that says, A, what the problem is, B, why you're the solution, and C, what are 3 things people are going to feel as a result of this interview with you on the radio. So I'm going to ask you the question, what is the problem that you address?
The problem I address is a lack of understanding, motivation, and awareness that people, in particular, people of African descent, have, and how we can be empowered, how we can be aware and realize that we do have the ability to make change in this world. And that really goes for anyone. We have the ability to make change. We are the superheroes. Okay,
that's good. So what might happen to people, you get an hour-long interview like this, only it'll be, on the radio. Okay. I think the thrust of it is going to be, you're going to interpret this film from a multidimensional perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, what will happen? What can you visualize and say will happen to the people who are listening to this interview? What do you think would happen to those in the audience
that are listening to the interview?
Yeah.
Well, that they will first want to buy and share the book. And that's the first thing. But that when they buy and share the book, and when they read the book, that basically they will have a better understanding of their role. I think that the two questions, or the 2 answers to the questions, are intersecting. That I want people to come away with an understanding that they are capable, that they are empowered. There's so many people that are marginalized, but also they're marginalized. There's a song, "Free Your Mind, the rest will follow," and there's another song, that "Free Your Mind and something else will follow."
Yeah.
That's what I want to happen. I want this book and others like it to help free people's minds, so that we will not fall for everything that we see, hear, or read, but that we will be able to think, that people will be able to think and will be able to rise up. And like I said, understand that they are the change agents that are in this world.
Have you heard from any comments? I know you probably have like some sentence stringing around in your head, remarks that people have made about what happened to them when they saw the movie. I'm talking now a little bit about the power of art to transform consciousness. Have people commented to you about what's happened to them after seeing the movie?
People have said, most people, a good number of people have said that they cried. Men and women have cried at the movie. I hear. Others have said that they were just speechless, that they didn't have any words at all. They needed to see it again because they have to process it.
Yes.
That they were not ready.
Yes.
They weren't particularly the individuals who do not see Marvel Universe movies.
Yes.
So someone like myself, I had not only this movie, but every Marvel comic movie, there's a tie-in from something previously that's happened. So I was able to tie in some previous things that I know into this movie. And so others, it's just like mind-boggling. They don't know what to say, or they cry, or they just sit there in the theater and speechless. Those are some of the reactions that I've gotten.
And you yourself, what would you say was the quintessential response or hope or feeling that you had after it?
My sense was just a sense of, I mean, it might sound, trite, but it's awe. AWE,
Yeah.
just awe.
Yes. Yes.
And I guess the sense of awe is because it's a superhero movie.
Yes.
Superhero movies all the time. I saw Wonder Woman. I thought Wonder Woman was a great movie. I was a Wonder Woman fan when I was a little girl. I would walk around my house, Wonder Woman,
Yes.
was shooting off of my wrist. But nothing compares to this.
Yes.
And it's because, I am a woman. Wonder Woman was great, but before I was a woman, I was Black. And I'm saying that because we look at, in my culture, we look at our existence from the place of our ancestors, from where we've come from. So my personal sense of being a woman, I loved Wonder Woman, and I'm rooted in my understanding of a womanist understanding, womanist theology, which is different from feminism. That's another whole story.
Yeah.
But as a womanist, I understand that I am here because of my people, and my people are men and women who are Black, and so I bring that to the table with me. They're of African ancestry. I bring all of that to the table with me. I bring from the villages and the nations and the kingdoms of Africa through the Middle Passage and all of the bodies that are at the bottom of the sea right now in the Atlantic.
Amen.
To the blood that is in the fields here right now that help to nourish the cotton, the blood that helped to nourish the tobacco and the cotton and everything else in the South. All of that is me. So I bring that to me, and I sit there and I say, wow.
Yeah.
This is it. Everything from the jokes of the sister, her name eludes me now, when oh God, the guy, he gets up, oh, what is his name? Anyway, and she said he startles her. The CIA guy, he startled, I can't think of his name for some reason. And she says, don't scare me, colonizer. And
yes.
It was such a hilarious moment because she's so funny and she's so brilliant. But it's so interesting, her unabashed, unashamed, just able to speak and say what she wants to say, when so often we, particularly those of us here in America, we don't always say. We check ourselves. So when we go into the supermarket, when we go into a fancy store, we check ourselves. We check ourselves, how are we going to carry this bag so that people don't think that we're going to put something in the bag? We check ourselves. We tell our children, we check them. We say, when you're driving, make sure you do this or don't do that. Make sure you are always extra nice. Sometimes people have said that they even tip more than they even have, because they don't want people to think that we are there's all sorts of madness that goes through the mind, because we have been here and we have to constantly prove ourselves. Here is a group of people untouched by colonization who do not have to prove themselves to anyone. They say what they want to say, how they want to say, when they want to say, and they are brilliant at it. And so those of us that saw the movie, we sat there wow, that's what it's like to just walk around without having to worry about someone following you, wondering if you're going to shoplift, wondering, what you're doing in an expensive car. My brother, I was with him once, he got stopped. He's a systems engineer, and he was driving a good car, and I was with him. He got stopped in a white neighborhood upstate. And I went ballistic, and he kept saying, as a black male, be quiet, shut your mouth, be quiet. And I would not, this was years ago, I was young in my 20s. He said, shut your mouth. I'm like, don't tell me to shut my mouth. Why did they stop you? He said, the cop said, listen to your brother, shut your mouth or I will take him in right now.
Whoa.
So this movie is like, yes, this is what it's like.
Yes.
Vicariously through this,
Yeah.
and possibilities, even if they are not what we have right now, it shows us what can be. Even if it's fiction, it can be reality. How do we make fiction reality? That's the question for us.
Very good. Now, I think Marge might have a question also. There's one, we're going to go out and see if there's a question in the field for you, because we only have 5 minutes left.
Okay, awesome.
Is there a question?
I do have a question, Lisa. It's something I've been wondering. It's what inspired this notion of Zeitgeist, your book and all, which is when I imagine when a movie like this is conceived, and then all the logistics of making a movie and how long that takes. And I noticed the perfect timing of it with the Me Too movement, the Parkland shootings, the March for Our Lives. I'm guessing that this director was catalyzed by Black Lives Matter and the last political campaign, but it still seems like there's a perfection to the timing of this movie that feels so Holy Spirit inspired, so perfect to the collective intelligence that I'm just wondering what you think of the perfection of this timing. It's stunning to me.
Yeah, like I said before, I think that the timing is right. I think that the timing is right. It's what we call, and Sister Jan knows this, probably a Kairos moment. The Kairos moment is that moment where we grab. It's a moment that is ordained by God, by the Creator, by the universe, whatever you say, by God. And it is the moment that you must grab hold of, because it is prime, it is now, it is for the seizing. And we must use that Kairos moment so that we can take advantage of it for the betterment of the world, the betterment of our communities. And that's what this is. This is a Kairos moment. And like I said earlier, this was not planned. I did not plan this at all. Kairos moments, and we know that everything is working together for the good when things begin to fall into place. And that's exactly what happened. It began to fall, and it was hard work. It was not like I didn't do any work. I was up night and day making a lot of mistakes, but there was an urge to grab hold of this and make it work.
But I would say that even of the filmmaker, the prescience, and then you, and that's all, I'm just deep bow.
Yeah. Well, remember, he's done 2 other movies, and they did very well, but not like this. And Fruitville Station was a very important movie about the shooting of the brother. His name eludes me, in California. But it did not grab a hold like this movie did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, again, the possibilities, the fact that it is fiction or mythical, but that's what I think grabs the creativity and the psyche of people, and this notion of the possibilities. That is so important. And I think that Ryan Coogler, the director, really did a marvelous job. Marvelous job.
I think if somebody can dream it, there's no reason why we can't live it. And Ryan Coogler figured out a way to show to us that it can happen. Even
Yeah.
if it's in the realm of science fiction, it can be science one day.
Yeah.
So I'm in support of it, and I know we're going to be leaving because our time's up, but stay on afterwards and we'll have a little chat after Marge stops the recording here. I'd like to say, everybody, thank you for showing up.
Jan,
Yes? Yes.
forgive me. I think that if folks need to go, they can, but I would love to honor Esther Oyolo's question.
What is it?
It's, and I'm going to reshape it, Esther, to keep it, to broaden it into what I think is the larger question. The question is, can books published in Africa easily sell in the West? It may be a great entry point into a question about also the differences in the sensibility of the West versus Africa as it relates to this topic. So it's a very practical question, but I'm going to invite you, Reverend Lisa, to broaden it into sensibility.
So the question again, let me make sure I understand it.
Can books published in Africa easily sell in the West?
Oh my!
Not sure. Yeah, and to me, it's a larger question of sensibilities.
Yeah,
Between the two.
You know, and I might be the wrong one to ask because I have books that were published in Africa. You know, I have books that were published by, you know, Alan Busak in South Africa and others. And so, you know, it's to me, it sells. But then again, I'm not your average, you know, person. I think that if it depends on marketing. This is, and Sister Jan might be able to speak more to this than myself, but I would think that it would depend on marketing and how it is connected. So for instance, this book, my book, I believe connects, it crosses the diaspora. It's not just for African Americans, although there's a lot of African American history and contemporary stuff that's happening in America. But as friends of mine in South Africa and someone in Swaziland even mentioned, it transcends that. And so I think whoever is writing the book in whatever country in Africa is able to transcend the diaspora and make it connect, then I think it's going to work as long as we get word of it. I think that might be the main problem. And again, Jan, you can speak to that better than I can.
Yeah. And I think too that part of the cultural zeitgeist now, the word diversity is up there. You know, and people are beginning to understand that it's not just a good idea, that it really pays off. Diversity. And I think publishers, high-minded publishers, successful publishers are looking for diversity and soliciting work by women, people of color, people from different cultures. There's many, many more African writers being published in America as well. Right now, I've got a slew of books by names of people I can hardly pronounce that are some of the best fiction I have read in years, and it's creating such a more potent global imagination. So I think if the question came from a woman who published a book in Africa, it doesn't mean that it cannot be also published in the United States. It doesn't mean that it cannot. It's probably being sold on Amazon, or it should be, you know, but I don't know about all. I know I have books. Most of my books are being sold in other English-speaking countries. So it's a global world now. It's a small world. So my answer is yes, but I think you could extend the reach of the book by also getting it in the hands of publishers who deal with whatever your subject matter is in the United States. You know, that would be my suggestion. And well, if you're in the guild too, bring it to the guild, you know, pass it around, upload some segments, have us read parts of it. You know, share it around because we help each other. This is a sisterhood. You're part of a, you know, people sign up for this, not just for what we can get, but what we can give. And there's so much solidarity here. So put the question out, you know, on our Facebook page and see how the body politic responds.
Wow. Good. That's good.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Reverend Lisa.
Yes.
Thank you, Marge.
Yeah, rock on. This was really fun. And I want to tell everybody that I did put in the chat room link after link so you can stay in touch with Lisa, find her book, buy it there. You're the superheroes. We're the superheroes. I'm going to also articulate it because the chat room doesn't show up on YouTube. www.lisadjenkins, LISADJENKINS.com.
Org.
Days.
It's org.
.org. You're an org. Wow. .org. Forgive me.
That's okay.
I did put it in the chat room correctly because I just cut and pasted it.
Okay.
My
Awesome.
and also 40 days of biblical and cultural insight into the Black Panther movie is available on Amazon. If you click on Lisa's name at her Amazon page, you'll find her Amazon page. And Lisa, where else should we keep track of you? Facebook, Twitter.
I'm on Facebook. I'm just learning Twitter. As far as books are concerned, I am keeping up with my author page on Amazon, which lists my book signings and where I'll be speaking and where the books will be sold and that. So I would say the best thing to do would be my website, which is lisadjenkins.org, and my Amazon author page. So if you go to Amazon, I've already set up an author page which lists, and you also get an RSS feed with my blog to the Amazon page as well as my events that are coming up.
That's pretty good. You're doing really well in your marketing campaign. You're doing good. Hey, when will this recording be uploaded, Marge?
I would say I always promise within 48 hours. So
okay.
My intent is to, upload it after it closes up after we say goodbye. So there soon, I will send an email. Please forward it to all your peeps, Lisa.
Yeah.
And,
I'll put it in mine.
Yep.
All right. So maybe we should stop the recording, but stay online, Lisa, so we can do a farewell afterwards. But let's just say goodbye to all the people who are here with us today.
And I can't wait to see everybody at the conference.
I wanted to just say, Jan, that I've also put your website, www.janphillips.com, JANPHILLIPS.com, also in the chat room because you and Lisa are kin.
Yes, we're kin.
And in terms of being thought leaders. So thanks so much, both of you.
Good.
I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks, folks, for participating.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Marge.
Your names and your comments. Good night. Good day. Good night. Depends on where you live. Okay.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
All right.